Okay, over the years, I've had many people ask if I would do a video that basically followed the production, writing, everything of a video from start to finish. Well, for those of you who've been asking for it, today is your day. I am going to try this with my next video, which means I'm going to be shooting this in various different parts. This is going to be the very first part, so my hair will change, my clothes will change throughout this thing. I'm going to be recording little bits of it as time goes on. But let me just kind of start by laying the groundwork, or giving you a little bit of lay of the land of how everything works on this channel. So I do have a team, and for anybody who's a supporter on Patreon, you personally support this team. I basically decided at a certain point I was making enough from AdSense, I was making enough from sponsorships that I didn't really need to pay myself through the Patreon money, and so I basically started diverting all Patreon money to growing the team because I felt like that was the best way to grow the channel and grow the capabilities of what I can do here. So people who are supporting on Patreon who really want to see the channel grow and see me be able to do more, bigger, better stuff, I felt like that was the best way to do it, was to grow a team with it. So that's what I've been doing with Patreon money. And so let me just talk about the team real quick. There's 4 main people who are involved. 5. There's 5 main people who are involved outside of myself with the YouTube channel. So I have 3 writers and researchers. There's Ryan, there's Cooper, and there's Jason. There's an editor named Nick. He's been with me the longest. I don't know how I couldn't eat cereal without Nick at this point. And then I have a virtual assistant that works overseas named Jeff. I will get to Jeff's role here in a second. And we organize all the videos and all the communication between all of us through a few different programs. The first would be Slack. That's just kind of how we talk with each other back and forth, and we have, general chat rooms. We all know how Slack works. So we use Slack. We use Trello as a project management system, and I'll explain how all that works in just a second. And the third thing we use is Evernote. I use Evernote to keep all of the scripts together. The reason I use Evernote over, say, Google Docs is just because I've been using Evernote for a really long time, and it just all makes sense to me to keep them all in one place where you can just kind of like scroll through and click the ones that you want to work on. And plus, they all have access to it, so they can add their notes, they can, put their scripts in there, and then I can just take it and work with it. So basically the sequence of events is I start with an idea, and it might have been something I've gotten from people in the comments. It might be a Patreon person. It might just be something that I'm just like, why haven't I ever covered this before? But it starts with an idea, and then I do an outline, and then I send that outline on to the writers, who then take it, they do all the deep research, they look up all the links and whatnot, and then they actually kind of sketch it out. Sometimes it's more completely filled out, and they actually write lines and everything, and sometimes it's just more of a more detailed outline that I can work off of. But they do their bit, and then they send it back to me. Then I do another pass on it, just to make sure it's kind of in my voice, just to make sure I fully understand it, because a lot of times the writers will take, they'll do a lot of research and stuff, and then I kind of look at it and it's like, okay, I don't think I fully get this. I want to make sure I understand it before I do a video on it. But I do a Joe pass on it, then I shoot it, then Nick edits it, and he does a rough pass. And the rough cut, I then have to send off to sponsors, if there's a sponsor involved, which usually there are these days. But I send it off to sponsors, I get their approval on it, and then Nick finishes up and he does the final pass, and then I upload it, and then there's all the sort of promotion of it that happens afterwards. And really the best way to explain this is to just jump right into Trello. So this is some serious inside baseball, and you're probably looking at a lot of stuff on the screen that has not come out yet, so I'm giving you access to stuff that nobody else has seen outside of this team. The way Trello works, if you're not familiar with it, is they have these little drop-down boards, and all these little cards are inside the boards, and then inside the cards there's other information that you can go on from there. But the way I have this lined up, there's a whole lot of junk down here, but there's a flow from left to right. So these first 3 rows right here, they say tentpole videos, random, and AWJ. The random refers to Random Thursday videos. Even though I'm only releasing videos on Mondays now, I still sort of categorize them as Answers with Joe videos and Random Thursday videos, because they do sort of have different styles. But so there's a Random Thursday list, there's an Answers with Joe list, and then I have what I call tentpole videos. These are videos where I would actually travel somewhere or interview somebody or shoot something outside of here, maybe in a big intro sketch or something like that, short films and whatnot. So these first 3 rows are just sort of a list of ideas that I would want to work on. And the team can go in and just sort of like attach themselves to it if they like an idea, if they want to pursue it further. So there's Ryan right there. There's Cooper right there. Jason is on these over here. And we usually select these. We have a meeting at the beginning of every month. In fact, I've got one tonight with the guys, and we sort of just catch up with each other and share information. And we pull up Trello and we literally just go through it, and it's sort of a free-for-all. They're like, I like this idea. I like that idea. And I just assign their names to it. So moving this way, we now have this system where I get them outlines on the 1st and the 15th. And then they take it from that 1st or 15th, and then they do their scripts. And their scripts are now due on the 1st or 15th based off of that. I'll explain that a little bit better here. But basically, this one is outline due on the 1st, outline due on the 15th. So these are all me. Right now, string theory is one of them that... So being that it's the 1st, all of these should be clear. So I'm a little bit behind. Now, these 2 right here are all me. I'm going to write those myself. So there's not another team member that I need to like get that done for. But this one, for Ryan, does need to be done, and I'm a bit behind on it. But this is the one that I'm going to follow through, so that's why I kind of was leaving it there so that I could record this bit. So basically, when I finish this outline, I will move it to over here, because if I finish the outline on the 1st, then their script will be done on the 15th. So they've got 2 weeks for each one of them. So when I get done with outlining it, I'm going to move it over here. So these over here are scripts that I've already outlined for the 1st through the 15th of April. So on the 15th, these are due to me. So once they finish that, it will get sent over here into the Joe Pass category. All right, so let me back up just a little bit and clarify how this works. It helps if you look at a calendar here. So on the 1st, where the red dot is, that's where we are today. So I have scripts due, or I have outlines due to them on the 1st, and they have scripts due to me on the 1st. But once I get the outlines to them by the 1st, then they have to the 15th. They have 2 weeks. They have from the 1st to the 15th to get their script to me. And I have 3 outlines that I have to get to them, one for each of them, between the 1st and the 15th. So that's my job, is getting them outlines. Then their job is getting back to me with the scripts. So it's kind of a rolling thing. Hopefully that does make sense to you. It does make sense to us, and it kind of works and everything. But anyway, so once we get in here, and it's time to do a Joe Pass. Now, I've already been working on this, and when I get done with it, when I get done with my pass on this, then I will move it over here, and it's time for me to shoot it. So once I shoot it, it automatically saves into a Dropbox folder where Nick then takes it and starts working on this on the video, the edit. So then I move it over here. So once this gets approved by the sponsor and the rough edit, then I move it over to final edit, and then when it comes time to actually post it on the YouTube channel, that goes into distribution. So that's the workflow, and that's what you're going to see throughout this video as I'm working on this script. Okay, so now we're really getting into the weeds, and you're really getting some insider baseball on exactly how my videos work. I do actually have a video script template that I go by. Now, I am not religious about this. It's sort of a framework that I go by to sort of help keep the structure of the videos intact. It doesn't mean I stick to it 100%. If it makes more sense to kind of just go off in storytelling mode, then that's what I do. But it basically starts with a big intro here at the beginning. But I have a little formula here. It's like grab attention, tell a story, talk about something tangentially related. And I mean, the grab attention is like the first line. The first line that I say is something just to get people to be like, ooh, interesting, you know? And as you probably know, if you watch my videos, I don't usually just start talking about the subject. I usually kind of come at it from the side a little bit or from the back door. I try to approach it from a different angle, basically. But anyway, then I connect it to the subject, so I kind of like get it back to what this video is actually about, and then I leave them hanging with something to pique their interest as it goes into the title animation. After the animation, again, these are just very vague terms, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a framework for the video. I set it up, I explain why the subject is important, and it's kind of an either or. I either set it up or I describe why this is important. It doesn't have to be both. Then there's basic overview, details of whatever it is I'm talking about, or if there's any kind of list, you know, sometimes it's like 5 horrible ideas that went, you know, really well or whatever. And And then I try to take it deeper. I try to get it into, I try to go into levels of it that are beyond what's just at the surface level. That's what take it deeper means. I was trying to make that more clear, and I think I just said the same thing over and over again. But to me, the take it deeper is sort of the secret sauce. That's what people like about the videos. It's not just the hey, here's some facts about a thing. It kind of like brings it back into like what it means to us and what it means about reality and what it means about the world and life in general and all that. That's what take it deeper means. And then there's always some kind of, I try to put in a conclusion or a callback if I can like make some joke that ties back to something that I said in the intro or something. It's just kind of like wrap it all up in a nice bow. And then there's just sort of the stuff at the end. There's a sponsor message to make sure and thank the Patreon supporters. And I just have my regular close that I don't even script that bit. That's just kind of there. So the video that I'm going to be working on throughout this video is going to be on string theory. If you want to take it all the way back to the very beginning of how a video gets started, it would basically be, how did you come up with the idea for this? And honestly, string theory is just one of these subjects that it's like, I can't believe I've never really covered it. I've covered so many, physics and science things on this channel, everything from quantum gravity. You could just keep listing them. And somehow I've never quite gotten onto string theory, which is ridiculous. So again, a lot of times it's, I get 10 ideas thrown at me a day, either through email or through Patreon or through Facebook. And I'll be honest, 99% of the time, it's either something I've already covered or something that doesn't fit the channel or something it's like, yeah, that might be interesting, but I don't personally feel a connection to that subject, so I don't really feel a need to cover it. Or it's something that everybody else has covered way better, so why would I bother? But for whatever reason, every once in a while, one bubbles up to the surface, and I'm like, you know what, that says something to me. That's interesting. I want to cover that. So there's a million different ideas, obviously, and I come to them a million different ways. String theory, literally, it's kind of an outlier, and it's kind of weird that I'm picking it for this topic because it's just something that I cannot believe I haven't covered yet. So I'm finally getting to it. So there's string theory. All right, so bouncing back over to Evernote, the first thing that I do is I create a note for string theory. And let me pull it up. So quite simply, I just go up here to New Note, and I title it String Theory. And I know that Ryan is on this one, so I go ahead and put his name on there so I make sure I know who I'm talking with here. And then I just take this video script template, I copy it, paste it in here. I always want to make sure and give myself a little leeway because it is bold. And that's the start of a script. Very simple. All right, so when I'm starting out working on a script from nothing, there's a couple of things that I do. One is I just start listing stuff that I already know about the subject, like sort of kind of maybe construct as much of a narrative as possible in there, just based off of stuff that I've, gleaned in the past or whatever. And I also try to keep focused on what it was that made this subject interesting to me in the first place. Like what was it about this that made me go, I need to do a video about that. And then I think about like how I want to introduce it. So I'll just kind of power through all this. All right. So I usually I call it Joe's notes or Joe notes up here at the beginning. Simply, this is really a message for the writer. So this is going to Ryan. So this is me kind of laying out for him what made me interested in this, why I felt like this was worth covering, and what basically what I want out of this video. So I got my notes up here. That's just a basic start. I'm not. I'll expand on that in a little bit. Let's see. So what do I know about string theory right now? I know there's 11 dimensions. See, when I talk about tiny vibrating strings, it makes me think of the vibrations in quantum field theory. So see, like as I come up with these thoughts of things that I already know about this, it kind of leads me down and helps me create the narrative around it. So I just talked about I just jotted down that string theory was supposed to kind of create a bridge between quantum theory and and relativistic physics, because there's that whole two different physics going on at the same time thing. That's like the theory of everything everybody's trying to look for. Like this was an attempt to bridge that. So I felt like that needs to be a big part of the narrative, so I just made a note for that. I also just write down a lot of questions that I have. Sometimes the best way to start an answer is to make sure you know the questions. Now, as for coming up for intro ideas, this is just kind of, I just make a little note here. I just make notes of ideas that I have for the intro. It's really just a lot of free association. A little bit of free association that's happening right now is, I know that, there's like 11 dimensions required for string theory. So when I think of dimensions, I think of like Buckaroo Banzai. Which, how many dimensions was that one? I've already forgotten. Buckaroo Banzai. Okay, across the 8th dimension. Some kind of reference to that. I could maybe just start with the whole quantum theory relativity divide. And maybe just tell a story in there about all the arguing that they had at the Solvay conference. Maybe something about Einstein being wrong about quantum theory. He's kind of associated with ultimate level of genius, but he was actually quite wrong on that. Maybe if I can just find some even crazier, really crazy theory of everything. So it's almost like, if you think string theory sounds crazy, let's start with like way crazier. Okay, so this isn't quite so crazy now. Something like that. So these are just, again, a little free association, a few thoughts. I will let those sit and fester and do what they're going to do. And in the meantime, let's get started doing some actual research. So the first thing that I usually do is I jump into YouTube. And I search for videos on it. So string theory, this should give me a whole lot of stuff. I'm sure there'll be a PBS spacetime in there. Kurzgesagt right off the bat. Michio Kaku, Brian Greene, that'd be a good one to look at. Okay, so PBS spacetime on two different sides of it. So clearly there's a lot to look at here. The reason why I start with YouTube, I'm a bit of a visual learner, so watching YouTube videos is kind of a nice way to start. Kind of gives me a good lay of the land. But also, I'm making a video about string theory. I kind of want to see what the other videos about string theory out there have in them. If there's good stuff from that I could, put into this one, awesome. But I also just don't want to say the exact same things as everybody else.
With a wave that has a lot of energy, it alters it. By looking at a particle, we change it. So we can't measure elementary particles precisely.
So this is clearly a vast subject that could go down a million different rabbit holes. Now is not the time for that. That comes later. Right now, I'm already behind on getting this to Ryan in the first place, so I've got a little bit of a time crunch here. So I think I've got enough from watching these to sort of kind of construct a basic narrative around this, so that's what I'm going to work on right now. All right, so this is not the most well fleshed out outline that I've ever done, but it basically, it kind of fills in these gaps and kind of provides some direction for Ryan to go into. So he's going to be the one that really researches it and really finds all the nuggets and the details and winds up putting it in there. So it's pretty much good to go. So what I do is I come over here back into Trello and I find string theory. So the outline was actually due on the 1st. Right now it's what, the 4th? But so now I move this over here to this column so that Ryan knows that his script is due on the 15th. I will give him a little wiggle room since I was a little bit behind on my end. But so I drop that in there, and then I reach out to him on Slack to let him know that it's in his court. Okay, so a little time has passed. It's May 1st right now, and I got the script today from Ryan on string theory. So I've taken a look at it, but there's definitely going to need to be some work done to it. So yeah, every writer has their strengths and their weaknesses. I know Ryan watches this channel, so hi Ryan. But we've talked about this before. Ryan's superpower is he is a fantastic researcher. He goes as far as to actually like call some of the experts that he finds in his research and interviews them and stuff. So a lot of the scripts that I get from Ryan are super information dense, and he's more used to writing with sort of an article style or a narrative style. So a lot of what I have to do with Ryan's scripts, or I need to go through and kind of make them more dialogue-y, make them more like script format. And it's also just a little bit, this is true of everybody though, I've got to put it in my voice, I've got to make sure I got to make sure I understand everything too. But Ryan does a great job of really packing a lot of information in there, and I knew with the string theory video there was going to be a lot of complex ideas and topics. So that's what I'm going to be spending a lot of time on with this particular script, is going through and kind of breaking apart some of the sentences so that I'm not having to repeat like big long phrases. Like sometimes I can go on a bit of a rant. They're usually not scripted out so much. It's just me talking. The more something is scripted and I have to like repeat big long chunks of text, the more difficult it is. And again, when it's something super complex like this and you've got especially names and dates and big concepts and sciencey jargon that I probably even barely understand, it's very challenging to get through a big long chunk of paragraphs. So depending on how complex the topic is and how long it is, I just kind of like have to gauge that and go through and cut them up. I also feel like it's helping me to be able to get these lines out, but it also, I think, just by breaking it apart into the smallest nuggets possible, it just kind of helps to make it easier for other people to understand as well. Like it kind of forces you to get down to the basic stuff and arrange it in such a way that it's more bite-sized and manageable. Another little piece that I have to apply to all this is sort of like looking at a bigger picture of it and saying, like, is there some running gag that I can apply throughout this whole thing? Is there some way I can make fun of myself to get across that this is difficult stuff and even I barely get it, or maybe I don't even get it at all? Sometimes I do cover a topic that I just don't get. And it's just like, okay, here's what I have in front of me. Here's what the research says. I'll let you guys run with it. This might wind up being one of those, but it should be fun. Let's go through the script. All right, so I saved you the torture of watching me go all the way through this script. It took about a day or so. I finished it last night, so I was gonna sit down and record it today. I actually just finished the loudest sound video. I was gonna, come hell or high water, I'm going to record both of these today. So usually when I do these scripts, I tend to just kind of go all the way through it and then do the intro later. I've been trying to do more of the fun sketches at the beginning of videos, but I think with this one, since for one thing, when I did a read through of it, it came out at around 20 minutes, so it's already pretty long. I'm not going to put a big intro at the beginning of this one. I'm just going to do something really quick and easy, which I haven't written it yet. It's like 3:30 today. It's Monday. I really do want to shoot this today, because if I do, I'll get like 3 weeks ahead, which is something I've never been able to achieve. So I'm just going to come up with something really just random the rest of the video. Now, what does happen a lot of times is since the writers start after the animation, sometimes just because they're writers and they kind of have their own little flow, sometimes what they do at the beginning is something that I can kick up and make it the intro to the video. This one might happen. If I just really can't think of anything else, I might be able to do that. but I think I'm just going to come up with something. Alright, so it's time to record the video. First things first is I gotta move the big chair over here out of the way, and I move over my little stool, which is entirely uncomfortable, but it doesn't have a back to it. I mean, at least not one that you can see on camera, so that's good. And one of my favorite things about this is I was able to put rollerblade wheels, so it rolls around real easy. This junk over here was supposed to be a video on TMI. It's some cereal that my wife ordered that is inedible. It's just like, I got so mad that we bought that stuff because you literally can't eat it. It's disgusting. I decided I was going to do a video basically on internet ripoffs because I felt like that was a ripoff. Like it is seriously so bad that I was just like, did anybody eat this before they sold it? It's so bad. So that was a ripoff. There's some other stuff down here that my wife had ordered that was totally not what it was advertised to be. So like, I was planning on doing a whole video about like how we got scammed basically from a couple of things online. And then the whole COVID thing happened and it just suddenly felt like, this isn't important. This doesn't matter. The next thing is to step into this here closet that is just as much of a mess as the rest of the room, but I gotta pick me out a shirt. And I always try to, I always pick a shirt that is on the store, obviously. That's the whole point of wearing it. I usually wear these 2 or 3 times as I'm recording before I wash them, which means they're pretty disgusting, especially as warm as it gets up here. But I'll try to pick a shirt that has, I don't know, something to do with the topic, like anything that's traveling to Mars, obviously. That would be a great one for that. This one, I think, is what I'm going to go with today because string theory is kind of, kind of a kooky theoretical thing, and this is like somebody pondering the universe. And I just like this shirt. Also like this shirt because the design is pretty high up on the shirt, which actually means you can see it on camera. It's not too low. Some of these, as much as I like them, let's see, where's a good example here? Yeah, this one right here. It's a great shirt, but I don't wear it very often because it's pretty far down the shirt, and you really only see about this high up, and it doesn't make sense. Alright, so here's the setup. I got your camera up there, you got the script right below it. I sit back here, and you can see me on the little screen right there. You want to turn on the lights. I got the little stream deck. Boom! Lights are on. There's a lot more you can do with the stream deck. I just I only have the lights on there right now, really. I haven't really messed with it too much. That's all I really wanted, was just to be able to click on the lights and boom, have lights. So I got that. Alright, so this is OBS. This is the program that I use to record everything directly into the computer. And so before I get started, I've got to set up where I'm going to record this. And I save all of these to a Dropbox file. This is 051820 string theory. So yeah, this folder is shared with my editor Nick. So as soon as I finish recording these videos, they pop up in his Dropbox, and he's good to go. One last thing before I get started. Yes, don't judge. I do put a little bit of makeup on. I've never really hidden this, but I come from a film and an acting background, and you are required to put some kind of makeup on. I put a little bit underneath my eyes just because when I don't, everybody tells me to get some sleep. Love getting those comments. But I just kind of like put a little, I first borrowed one of these from my wife, and then I ran through it and wound up buying my own. So I'm officially a guy that buys makeup. But I just kind of like smooth out my skin a little bit, and I've got, if I have any bumps or whatever, I put it on there. It also, by the way, prevents it from being too shiny. So it's basically just hiding the circles under my eyes and keeping me from being too shiny. That's just, look, every big macho male star you've seen in the movies are plastered with makeup, I promise you. All Alright, now to get mic'd up, I go underneath my shirt and clip it on up here. And I also do a little loop in it right there because otherwise it kind of pulls down on the shirt and just kind of like brings more attention to it. So I don't know, I'm just kind of fascinated by how humans have dealt with situations like this in the past. And the Black Death just seems like the ultimate example of this. And I'm also fascinated by how, you know, situations like this have changed the world going forward afterwards. But one thing I keep going back to in my mind is that, you know, as bad as this is today, at least we know what viruses are. Okay, that was kind of a marathon recording session, and I am exhausted right now. And it's also like 6:30 and I haven't had dinner and I'm getting kind of hungry, so I'm gonna go eat. And yeah, so this immediately went off to Nick, and he's gonna get started doing the editing. I obviously won't have any footage of him editing because he's doing it on his own, and I'm not gonna bother him with it. He's got work to do. So I will catch up later when he's done with it, and I'll kind of show you the next step of the process after he finishes editing, which is I go through and well, you'll see later. Okay, so I got the edit back from Nick, and this, of course, because I chose on string theory to cover the entire process of making this video to give you an accurate look at what making a video is like, the whole process of it. As it turns out, of course, this one is going to be a little bit different from the way I normally do it, because normally Nick will do a rough edit, he sends that to me, and that rough edit will have at the end all the sponsor stuff at the end of the video. Is like, that gets fleshed out, all the rest is just rough. And I send that to the sponsor, and then the sponsor approves of the video, or at least the sponsor message, and then we finish up the rest of the editing, and it usually goes out, I would say 80% of the time it goes out on Sunday night, which is way too late. But this is a good thing because we are actually starting to get ahead on scripts and on recording stuff. We actually have this one ready to go, completely fleshed out before we send it in for the sponsor approval. This almost never happens. So I hope that this is normal going forward, because that's kind of the whole idea. But in the past, this has not always been the way this goes, but it seems to be the way it went today, so that's a good thing. So I'm going to pull up the version that Nick edited, and it should be 95% of the way there, and I'm going to kind of go through it and make whatever changes I feel like are needed, and you can come along with me on that. So let me pull that up. This video is supported by CuriosityStream. Like many of you, over the last few months, I've been sheltering in place as much as possible. And to pass the time, I've been watching a lot of documentaries. And for some reason, I keep going back to documentaries about the Black Plague, because they're just such a pick-me-up, you know? Why? I mean, I seriously wonder what would happen if you went back in time to the Black Death and tried to explain to them that actually it's these tiny little bugs that are too small for your eye to see, and they get into your bloodstream and they tear apart your cells. And oh, what are cells? Right. Okay, so all of the images that you see in here, these are all the images and video that went up on screen. These are all things that Nick went out and found. Or were attached to the articles that were used in the research and whatnot. A big part of my going through this and this whole process is me kind of picking and choosing which one of those stay. A lot of times he puts a lot more in there than I actually need, but that's perfectly fine. He knows that. We have an understanding. It's like throw all of it at the wall, and if it doesn't work for me, then I'll take it out. In this particular case, what happens a lot of times is I'll be making a joke or doing a little bit of a bit, and to me, having that that thing over here on the side is a bit distracting and can kind of take away from it. So in this case, I think I'm going to take these out. I feel like one of the great through lines of science over the years has been the constant breaking down of things into smaller and smaller components. You know, cells, organelles, molecules, atoms, protons, quarks. it just goes on and on. Whenever we think we've found the smallest thing,
That
there's
was Nick.
always
Nick threw that
something
joke in there.
smaller. So imagining that at the smallest scales, what you basically get is this. Sounds insane, but not any crazier than trying to go back to the 13th century and explain to them what viruses are. I can play a guitar chord, and another chord, and another chord, and then this chord. I've learned some things.
Okay, no.
And yet there's an entire...
I was just goofing around. That was not meant to stay in there. That does look like it would go in the outtakes, though. We do keep an outtakes reel. Alright, so that video has been exported. Time to upload to YouTube. Pretty simple. Anybody who's been on YouTube and knows how it works would be able to explain this. You go through, you find the thing, you put it up there. I always have to make sure and put the sponsor message, the sponsor call to action in that first line so that people can see it. And then I put a little describer line above, or right below that, try to get as much in there, like above the fold as possible. You only get 3 lines for people to see, so. And then below here, I always put links. And these all just come from the Evernote file that we use. Alright, I'll pick a new thumbnail here in just a second. For sponsored videos, I turn monetization on, but I can only show the display ads. I can't do the overlays or the skippable pre-rolls. And all the rest of this is done. Okay, so really one of the last and most important steps is picking a thumbnail or a thumbnail image. This is something that I've been kind of doing for a long time. My experience as an advertising writer before I did YouTube has helped out quite a bit with knowing how to craft titles and thumbnails. The title for this I kind of had in mind a long time ago. You probably saw me just write it down there. It's Untangling String Theory. I thought would be a fun title. So I have a few options here. There's some of the images that I used in the video that kind of display these 11-dimensional things, or I could actually play with images of strings. So let's just see what Google has for us. And by the way, yeah, I just kind of Google images, and I probably have used a lot of images that I shouldn't be using. Confession time. Calabi-Yau manifold. So let's start with that, because that's kind of an image that some people might recognize, but let's see what comes up there. So what I'm looking for here is something, first of all, visual and eye-catching, something that's gonna make people stop and look at it. The problem with these Calabi-Yau manifolds is they don't really look like anything specifically. I mean, so that's kind of cool. It's cool looking, but this is my concern about doing a Calabi-Yau manifold, is it's not going to really mean anything to anybody. Now here's another thing that you can take away is right here you're seeing other YouTube videos that used a similar image. To me that could be a bad thing. Now these are specifically about the Calabi-Yau manifolds, but I mean, you certainly don't want to have the exact same image that, you know, another channel might have. That's super low res. See, that's kind of crazy. See, the problem is if I say something about string theory and then show this, it's not gonna look like a string, you know? So it's interesting visual, but it probably doesn't mean anything to a general audience member. So that's kind of crazy. But again, that's from a YouTube video. You can always just do a search for string theory. So these are always an option, just kind of playing with interesting visuals like this. I like the idea of that one because that kind of gives a look at, you know, sort of like what the string actually might look like. But it's, see, this is how PBS Spacetime did it. And I was kind of considering something like that. See, that's just kind of, yeah, I'm gonna say that's really cool. I say this is actually a work of art, so I wouldn't want to use that. I'll take it, see what happens. Alright, so I like this, but it's saying that this is from Kurzgesagt, so if that's their image, I don't want to use that. I mean, that's kind of neat. See, something like that, or even something like this. Well, how big is that? Yeah, it's worth looking at. What I was going to say is that's a little bit too complex. Generally, you want it to be as simple an image as possible so that when people see it as small as possible, and I'll talk about this in a second, you want them to be able to see what it is. I mean, like, look at Kurzgesagt right there. It's very simple. It's not really crazy and complex like that, although it's pretty. It's kind of cool, but it's got... I didn't think about how tangled string just kind of looks like a big wad of junk. Ooh. So I'm going to steal that one. That's what I'm doing. I'm stealing. This is a bit more challenging than I thought. Opening up Photoshop. So you can see last week's on there. So let's go down here. And then I open up my downloads folder. Just pull in what I just downloaded. Oh, I've actually got a few of them. Yeah, a lot of these I don't realize how small they are until I get them in here, and then it's just like, jeez. So basically just drop it down here in the backgrounds folder. There's a little piece of text. There's a white and a blue text on each thumbnail, and I try to keep it as short as possible. Like that's actually pushing how long it should be. But I also don't want it to just repeat what the title says. So even though, so I've got string theory in the title already, so I don't want to just put string theory in here, but teasing it by saying theory of everything kind of gives you an idea of like what the point of string theory is. So I think I'll stick with that. No, I kind of like, I mean, it's very visually striking. It might grab people's attention. And it might work with the title. So, alright, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make exports of all these. And what I do is I share it with my Discord people, my Patreon supporters on Discord, and they get to kind of vote on it. And I usually go with whichever one they vote on. So, let me do that. So if you've ever wondered if there are any perks to being a supporter on Patreon, here's one of those perks. I can go in here to the Discord chat, go up to, oh, I'm in the OLF, no wonder. Upcoming videos, and this is where I share the thumbnails. Alright, so the top two have already got, this is what they do, is they give thumbs up or whatever, they give some kind of reaction to each one of them, and then people kind of talk about it down here. The first one feels tangible, like you could touch it. Gotta go for 2 because green. People usually chime in pretty quickly. And by the way, ever since I first started going to the Patreon people to get their opinions on this, I mean, it's worked pretty well. I mean, the videos have been doing well since I started doing this. I think they've got a good eye for this kind of thing. All right, so number 2 is running away with it. I can take a hint. So then you just upload the correct thumbnail here. All right, it's good to go. So the only thing left to do is I'm going to send this off to the sponsor and get their approval. But yeah. So yeah, I guess that's the end of this journey. Like I said, there's a few things about this that were a little bit different. Sometimes there's a bit more in the refining of the edit at the end than this, but for the most part, this worked out okay. But yeah, I guess by the time this comes out, you will have just seen the string theory video yesterday, and I hope this was. I mean, I get people asking all the time what the process is of making these videos, so I thought, how about I just document the process from start to finish? So there it is. The only thing left to do is to just make it public on Monday morning, but you don't need to see that. It's uploaded and we're good. So, all right. Hope that was enlightening, and maybe I can point people to this from now on whenever they ask what the process is to getting a video made. We'll see how this does, how it performs. I think it'll be a pretty popular topic, so we'll see. But anyway, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that. Catch you later.